In my last episode, I finished programming my Lego bowling alley. In today's episode, we're going to finish the lane and get the ball return working. So let's begin. Right now, the bowling balls come down a ramp out there and then down that track. Let's begin by raising up that track so that way we can install a mechanism somewhere over here that would be able to lift the ball up a little higher so it can continue down the ramp. Upon removing the old track and some pillars, we were able to add this new yellow track. With that ramp now raised, we're able to add another base plate so that way we can begin the ball return. Starting out with the walls, we need to decide what mechanism we're using so that way we can build it onto the wall. I started out with a tread lift, but decided there wasn't enough space to get it up. And then I tried to use an arm lift, and that didn't work either. So I then decided to have something be able to push the ball up this green track. But that didn't really work either. So I finally moved on to my last idea, which was a chain lift that kind of used that same mechanism from the green track lift. There's a small cart attached to the chain. Once it goes up, it pulls the ball with it. But when it goes down, it tugs under the track so that way the ball can roll over top of it. Now, if we spin this, it'll bring the ball up. With that mechanism now built, we can move on to the lane. So, beginning with adding in the infrastructure, we can then add the plates that the lane rests on. After that, we can add the wall, and then the lane and the gutters. Now we need to add the sensor that can detect when the ball is there to then activate the motor. This sensor detects the distance between it and the surface in front of it. So if we mount that vertically, it would be able to detect when the ball is underneath it. Next, we're going to use an ultrasonic sensor to detect when you roll the ball. Right now it's facing that wall, and when anything goes past it, it's going to make that motor spin for demonstration purposes. So if I pass my hand across it, that motor spins. Now, if I take a ball and roll it, it spins. If I take a ball and roll it faster, it doesn't spin. So it doesn't work, and I did a whole lot of testing, including with other sensors to figure out why. Until I put a sensor at about a 45-degree angle. That changes that sample rate of where it's detecting how far the distance is from just across the lane to diagonal, so it's getting more samples of where the ball would be crossing it. So now when I roll this ball fast, it's able to detect it, that motor up there spun. And with the quick time lapse, I have that now built into the machine. So now if I roll the ball fast, that motor will spin. With that working, let's finish the ball lift. With the quick program, we can see that when we take the ball and put it down the chute, it'll be able to lift it to the top of the ramp. So it'll go down there, wait, and that was way too fast. It now goes up slowly until it's past that point, then goes up a little quicker. And with that, we now have this section of the lane done. So now, let's move on to the next section. Beginning with this front wall, we can then add in the ramp for the ball chute. And then, after that, we're going to move on to the front side, designing that, and then getting the lane and gutters in. So now, when the ball goes up the lift, it then goes down the ramp. Let's continue the lane. All of these supports and the little pieces hidden there allow the lane to stay in place. That way it doesn't rattle around when the ball rolls across it. Before we do the lane, we need to do something with this front section. I've decided that I'm going to have the ball come out of there, and then it's going to go down here, and that'll use that weird 8-stud red section we have there, without having anything stick out the front of the machine, as I'm out of space. The design for the front of this machine was the one thing I didn't really plan. It took several attempts of me modifying, moving things around, and just completely redoing things. But you'll see at the end of the video here, I finally got it to where I wanted it to be. But before we finish that, we need to test the ramp. And it works. With the main structure of that front side done, but not the details, it was time for me to move on to the lane for now. So, with the lane now done, and then the gutters, I moved on to the top lid of that section over there. I used clear panels, that way you can see when the ball rolls underneath. Another thing I want to add is lighting. We'll have lighting in the actual lane, but I also want to add lights to the front of it. With those electronics tucked away, now when we flip the switch, it illuminates the bowling balls. Now that we have the rest of the lane built, I decided to adjust that sensor to where it's at a more extreme angle, looking much farther down the lane. And then we're also going to add another sensor looking at that front pin, so that way if any of those front 3 pins move or the ball goes across it, it would also detect it. So now the program can detect if it crosses that sensor or if it crosses that sensor. Let's finish this thing up, starting out with the lighting in the machine. Those lights are now able to light up the lane. And then I ran that wire down the side and then attached it to the battery box here. With this switch, we can now control the lights. And then we can cover it up with a couple panels. Now I'll just have to rebuild the wall. So I redid that wall and then added on a removable wall to the side. And lastly, I added on a clear wall to the back of it. Now we just need to do the programming that'll finish this machine up. Starting out, I added a button here, so that way if the ball is not detected by either sensor, you can just press the button. And then I added another button here that detects when the pin carriage goes down. So now we can use all that communication and put it in the programs. So let's begin. Beginning testing, stuff immediately started breaking. That wire wasn't long enough, so I had to fix that. And then the pin sweep itself just started jamming. The gears didn't really want to go in the slots they were supposed to. So I fixed that and added this piece as a guide. And then none of the sensors would detect that I bowled, but that was actually just a program issue, so I got that one fixed pretty easily. And then there was the issue of complete chaos, where all the motors decided to spin whenever they wanted to, and none of them were really communicating with each other. They each thought they already had their signals when they did not. And then upon throwing a bowling ball in there, the bowling ball never even got to the lift, and so the lift never activated. But that was because there was already a bowling ball down there jamming everything. So with that simple cleanup, I got it working. Then the drive to the pin carriage broke. So I redid the motor's gearing down ratio to make it much stronger, and now it works great. With all those fixes done, we can add some really cool features to the machine. Starting out with these panels, they will allow us to press the buttons on the EV3 bricks. That will then allow the user to control the machine. And then let's add these 2 buttons for a total of 11, plus this button as well. With a lot more program written, we now have even more display features. Starting out with the left brick, it's currently waiting for me to start the program, and now it's going to do its typical sweep. But right now it's flashing red because it doesn't want you to bowl. The pin sweep is down. Also, it shows frame 1. Machine now has a frame tracker which automatically goes up by 1 frame every time, or it can be manually done by these 2 buttons. And then the center button will sweep the lane if ever needed. If I insert this 10th pin, it'll deposit the pins and start the cycle. And on the front side, once that cycle is all done, it'll change those flashing red lights to green. And then, if we would cycle again, it would change frame 1 to frame 2 automatically. The second brick is even cooler. If we press this button to start the program, it shows pins counted 0, meaning that there are no pins that have gone through the machine. So that also means there's not been any pins that have been knocked down and counted. So if we activate the sensor down here to pretend that we bowled, now all those motors back there are spinning, trying to count a pin. So if I put a pin on the tread, it'll get counted, and then deposited where it needs to go. And then that'll increase from 0 pins counted to 1. The right brick, once started, says waiting for bowl. So if we trip that sensor with this yellow piece, now it says cycling ball. And we chuck a bowling ball down there. It'll then begin to get picked up. And now it says, ball cycled. Another feature of this one and the previous one is that when it's not doing anything, it's green, meaning that this one's okay to bowl, that one's okay to bowl, and right now that one's green, so it'd also be okay to bowl. So if I trip this sensor again, it now flashes yellow, which means this one's okay to bowl, but it's doing something. While this one would be flashing yellow, and this one would be red. And then, once the ball is cycled, it would still be flashing yellow, as it's still moving pins. But once 10 pins are counted, which would be displayed on this one would go right back to green, along with that one. With the machine now finished, I can't wait to showcase it to you guys in the next video. So be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. It's always free, and that way you don't miss the next video.